Are you ready to take full control of your life by mastering your emotions? In this powerful audiobook, Emotional Control for Life Mastery, you'll discover the secrets to staying calm under pressure, making better decisions, and building unshakable resilience. Across 10 life-changing chapters, you'll learn how to master your emotions, spot and understand triggers, break negative patterns, harness emotional intelligence, and stay composed in high-stakes moments. Every chapter is packed with practical strategies, real-life examples, and actionable practices that you can apply immediately to transform your daily life. This video is completely ad-free, so you can focus fully on learning without interruption. Subscribe now and join our daily audiobook journey. Unlock wisdom that will guide you from the first moment to the last, helping you develop emotional control and life mastery like never before. Start your transformation today. Don't miss a single chapter. Chapter 1. Master your emotions. Master your entire life. Mastering emotions is not a soft skill or a luxury reserved for saints. It is the central craft of a life lived with purpose. Emotions arrive like weather, sudden, loud, sometimes violent, but weather does not decide the course of a ship. The helmsman does. When a tight knot appears behind the breastbone, when heat flushes the face, and thoughts sprint toward worst-case outcomes, a single measured set of actions can change the day, the week, and cumulatively the life. This chapter gives clear tools to turn those first moments of inner turbulence into a disciplined practice of clarity and control. The aim is not to erase feeling, that would be inhuman, but to choose response over reaction and direction over drift. Begin with the simple truth. Emotions are signals, not orders. Anger is information about a boundary perceived to be crossed. Fear signals value and an anticipation of loss. Shame points to a mismatch between an action and personal standards. Treat each emotion as a messenger. Hear it, examine its origin, and decide whether obeying its first impulse will move life forward. A practical routine to start practicing this perspective is a 3-step pause: notice, name, and choose. When tension spikes, stop for 3 slow breaths. Silently name the primary feeling, anger, fear, hurt, and ask a single question: what choice serves the person I want to become? That question alone introduces the gap between instinct and intention. Physical anchors transform abstract control into something the body can hold. When anxiety rises, the body often tightens first. Use a grounding checklist that is fast and physical. Plant feet flat, feel weight on the chair, press fingertips together, and breathe out for a count longer than the inhale. A breathing routine that is immediate and practical. Inhale for 4, hold for 2, exhale for 6. Do this 3 times before speaking or taking action. It slows the heartbeat, reduces the flood of adrenaline, and creates a space where reason can reassert itself. Practice this breathing twice daily for 2 minutes to make it automatic under stress. Name the triggers before they name you. A trigger is any situation, person, or thought that reliably produces an outsized emotional response. Keep a simple log for 2 weeks. Whenever a strong emotion appears, jot 1 line: date, situation, immediate thought, and physical sensation. Patterns emerge quickly. Maybe traffic always escalates irritation to rage, or critical emails spiral into self-doubt. Once the pattern is visible, design a counterplan. For traffic, create a short audio ritual, 3 songs that reset mood, or a deliberate 5-minute breathing window before entering the car. For critical emails, craft a buffer, read, close the message, do a 2-minute breathing reset, then respond. Control begins long before a crisis. It begins in those predictable pockets of life. Reframing is the mental skill of changing the story that fuels emotion. Stories are powerful, but often inaccurate. The same event can produce pride, shame, or curiosity depending on the narrative chosen. Practice the three-question reframe. What is the fact? What story am I telling about it? What is a more useful story? For example, a missed deadline is the fact. The catastrophic story might be, I am incompetent. A useful story could be, this is a signal that processes need improvement. Fixable. Reframing doesn't ignore consequences. It changes the motive force from self-condemnation to effective action. Stoic discipline focuses on distinguishing what is within control and what is not. This is not passive acceptance, but high agency. Write 2 lists. Things in direct control and things not in your control. Place thoughts, judgments, and actions squarely in the first column, other people's reactions, weather, past events in the second. Use these lists when overwhelmed. If an item belongs to the first column, act. If it belongs to the second, practice a brief ritual. Breathe, say a short phrase, such as not mine to steer, and redirect energy to the first column. This repeated triage sharpens attention and reduces energy wasted on futile mental efforts. A daily emotional maintenance routine keeps the system resilient. Begin each morning with a 3-minute clarity practice. Sit, breathe, and silently state 3 commitments for the day in action language. Small, observable things like I will pause before answering feedback, not vague ideals. Midday, perform a 1-minute body scan, shoulders, jaw, chest, stomach, release anything tense. Before sleep, write 3 short entries in a journal. 1 lesson learned about feelings, 1 victory for emotional control, and 1 micro-plan to improve. This simplicity prevents theory from stacking up and turns mastery into muscle memory. Language shapes feeling. Replace explosive phrases with calibrated ones. Rather than "this is unbearable," practice "this is difficult right now." Instead of "they always do this," try "this is repeated, and I can respond differently." Language narrows or widens the emotional aperture. Practicing precise language tames emotional hyperbole and invites problem solving. Expose oneself strategically to small emotional challenges to build tolerance. This is emotional resistance training. If avoiding confrontation feels automatic, set a manageable goal. Have 1 honest 30-second conversation about a small boundary this week. If rejection is feared, aim to ask a modest request that might be declined. The goal is not to court suffering, but to expand the threshold for discomfort so that larger tests become manageable. Each small success rewrites expectation and increases confidence in handling real pressure. Relationships are the most consequential arena for emotional mastery. Empathy without boundaries leads to depletion. Boundaries without empathy lead to isolation. Practice a balanced script for difficult conversations. 1. State observation. When X happened. 2. Express internal experience. I felt Y. 3. Request change. Would you be willing to try Z? This script keeps the tone grounded and avoids escalation. If the other person reacts strongly, return to breathing and the simple question, what choice serves the person I want to be? Speak with calmness and clarity rather than reacting to provocation. When emotions surge in high-stakes moments, a brief tactical set of actions restores control quickly. Use the stop method. S. Stop movement or speech. T. Take 3 deep breaths. O. Observe where the emotion lives in the body. P. Proceed with a chosen response, not an impulse. This method gives the brain micro-time to switch from emotional autopilot to deliberate action. Train with it. Use it in small moments first. A minor irritation in line, a small criticism. Muscle memory grows when practiced in low stakes and holds when stakes rise. Self-compassion and ruthless accountability are not opposites. They are partners in durable change. When an emotional slip occurs, apply a short formula, own the fact in one sentence, extract one learning, and set one corrective action. For example, I raised my voice during the meeting. Next time, I will stand and breathe for 30 seconds before responding. This prevents the spiral of shame and turns mistakes into improvements. Finally, commit to a long view. Emotional control is not a one-time victory, but a lifelong craft. Progress will be jagged. There will be days of clear command and nights when anger or fear feels like a tidal wave. The important measure is return, how quickly the system recovers, and what steps are taken next. Keep a simple progress log, one sentence on wins, one on lessons, once weekly. Over months, this log becomes an archive of growth and a source of confidence. Action steps to apply today. First, practice the breathing routine. Inhale 4, hold 2, exhale 6, 3 times at the first sign of stress. Second, start a trigger log and record 4 instances over the next week. Third, choose one predictable trigger and design a 2-step counter plan to use whenever it appears. Fourth, speak in the relationship script once this week. Observation, feeling, request. Small consistent acts compound into a temperament that is calm by default rather than crisis-driven. Emotional control frees energy for meaningful action. When the inner climate is managed, attention is available to build skill, to grow relationships, and to pursue projects that matter. The goal is not to become a detached machine, but a person who feels deeply and chooses wisely. Temperament, like muscle, answers to steady training. Begin with these practices, measure progress simply, and keep the aim clear, to live with integrity, to respond rather than react, and to steer life toward whatever is chosen as valuable. Week by week, these disciplined choices create a life shaped less by impulsive weather and more by steady direction. Chapter 2. Spotting and understanding your emotional triggers. Every strong life begins with one honest map, knowing where emotional lightning strikes. Awareness is not a soft luxury, it is a survival tool and a platform for transformation. Emotions erupt for reasons that are often older than the moment they appear. A simple comment becomes a detonator because a past wound, an unmet need, or an old belief still lives under the surface. The first work is not to punish the feeling, but to record it without judgment, to become a careful cartographer of inner weather. Start by observing without commentary. When something moves you, irritation, sudden shame, a tightness in the throat, pause your narrative engine. Notice the physical facts, the tempo of your breath, heat at the cheeks, a clench in the jaw, a hollow at the base of the skull. These are objective markers that can be described without moralizing. Naming sensations in concrete physical terms reduces the pull of reactive language. Saying jaw tight or stomach dropping shifts the mind from storytelling into clear perception. The momentary skill of precise observation is the doorway to control. Track the context as if compiling forensic evidence. Each time a strong emotion appears, log 5 essentials: where you were, who was present, what words or events preceded it, the bodily sensations, and the immediate thought that flashed into mind. A single week of this practice reveals clusters. A certain tone of voice, a specific place, or one person will show up more often than chance would allow. Identifying the recurring pattern turns vague vulnerability into a concrete target for change. Look deeper at the thought that ignited the feeling. Often the mental line that leads to emotion is a short, automatic sentence. I am being disrespected. I always fail. They don't care. These automatic conclusions are not facts. They are interpretations shaped by memory and habit. Challenge the thought by asking 3 brief questions. What evidence supports this thought right now? What evidence contradicts it? What alternative explanation would be kinder and truer? This is not sophistry. It is a disciplined reappraisal that weakens the emotional impulse by exposing it to scrutiny. Understand the anatomy of a trigger. Triggers usually contain three parts: a current stimulus, a memory that amplifies that stimulus, and a belief that colors the meaning. The current stimulus might be a terse email, the memory may be childhood criticism, and the belief could be "I am not enough." When these three converge, the emotional response becomes disproportionate to the present moment. Separating the present stimulus from the past memory reduces the weight of the reaction. Ask, which piece is present now and which belongs to a prior time? When the memory is responsible for most of the charge, treat the present event as teachable, not threatening. Use a simple reconstruction method after a trigger has passed. Sit quietly and reconstruct the chain of events in short sentences. What occurred, what I felt physically, the first thought I had, and what I did next. Keep each sentence lean and factual. The goal is not to ruminate, but to clarify the link between input, interpretation, and output. Over time, this reconstruction reveals habitual sequences that can be interrupted. Design tactical interventions for the most frequent triggers. If criticism from a manager repeatedly produces shame that spirals into withdrawal, prepare a two-step defensive routine. First, slow the immediate physiological escalation with a timed pause. Count slowly from 1 to 8 while breathing evenly. Second, convert a defensive impulse into a curiosity-driven question. Can you help me understand what you mean by that? The pause blunts adrenaline. The question shifts the interaction from combat to information gathering. Rehearse these actions aloud until they feel natural. Notice the role of unmet needs behind triggers. Emotions often signal a basic requirement, seeking fulfillment. Respect, safety, belonging, competence. Identify which need is most active for a recurring trigger. If impatience surfaces around family dinners, the unmet need might be connection or a desire for being heard. Planning an explicit small action to meet that need, reserving 15 uninterrupted minutes to talk with a partner or asking for a brief check-in before a difficult topic, gives the nervous system permission to relax over time. Language can either sharpen awareness or fuel drama. Replace sweeping absolutes with precise descriptions. Instead of "they're always disrespectful," try "I felt dismissed when that comment happened." The latter contains less blame and invites resolution. Practicing this shift in private speech reduces escalation and makes repair possible when others are involved. Create micro-experiments that test automatic beliefs. If the thought, "if I show weakness, I will be rejected," drives anxiety, try 3 small safe disclosures in different settings: a colleague at work, a friend, a family member. Keep the disclosures brief and controlled. Record outcomes. Most of the time, the feared catastrophe will not occur. These experiments are not grand challenges. They are careful probes that gradually rewrite the nervous system's default assumptions. One practical exercise to perform daily is the trigger mapping practice. Each evening, answer 4 questions in 1 to 2 sentences each. What emotional spike occurred today? Where did it happen, and who was involved? What first thought came to mind? What single, small behavior could I commit to next time this appears? Doing this for a month solidifies pattern recognition and produces realistic, specific plans rather than vague resolutions. The habit of nightly mapping short-circuits surprises by making tomorrow's responses prepared instead of improvised. A real-life example shows how mapping and a small rehearsal change outcomes. A project leader repeatedly felt furious when a teammate questioned timelines. The fury felt immediate and righteous. It led to sharp emails and damaged collaboration. Recording each incident revealed a deeper pattern. The leader's father had publicly called him lazy as a child whenever deadlines slipped. The current trigger, the teammate's question, activated that old memory and the belief, "I am incompetent." With that awareness, a tactical plan was developed. Pause for the duration of a single full breath when challenged, then respond with a clarifying question that reframed the exchange as problem-solving rather than personal judgment. In the first meeting after applying the practice, the leader caught the breath, asked for specifics, and discovered the teammate had information about resource constraints that required adjustment, not punishment. The relationship shifted, productivity improved, and the leader's internal alarmed voice quieted with each successful encounter. Boundaries are a crucial complement to trigger work. Not every emotional storm requires endurance. Some triggers arise because current behavior violates core standards. When a repeated source of stress is identifiable and controllable, set a clear boundary. State it plainly and calmly. What behavior is unacceptable, what consequence will follow, and what will change if the boundary is honored. Boundaries reduce feedstock for triggers by aligning the external world with internal values. Resourcing the nervous system is part of the equation. Chronic sleep debt, poor nutrition, and constant stimulation lower resilience and increase sensitivity to triggers. Improving basic rhythms, consistent sleep hours, a short walk midday, and reducing evening screen time raises the threshold for reactivity. Practical effort on body habits is not indulgence, it is preventative maintenance for emotional clarity. Be patient with this work. Patterns rooted in childhood or long habits resist quick correction. Progress is measured in increasing intervals between triggers and the growing facility to respond intentionally. Keep a simple record of progress, a weekly note on one instance where a prepared response succeeded and one insight learned. Over months, this record becomes proof that the new architecture is functioning. Finally, practice a small daily phrase that reorients attention, a short, silent sentence such as observe, breathe, choose. Repeat it twice when encountering tension. The phrase is a compact protocol that interrupts automatic escalation and refocuses the mind on agency. It is not a magic incantation, it functions like a switch that channels attention toward deliberate steps. Mastering triggers is the labor of a craftsman. It requires curiosity, steady attention, and small designed experiments rather than dramatic overhaul. When vulnerability is met with method rather than shame, a person learns that emotional storms are manageable and that the inner weather can be navigated with increasing skill. Over time, living with this attention produces quieter reactions, better relationships, and a daily life shaped more by intention than by impulse. Chapter 3. The science behind emotions and human behavior. Human behavior is not random, and emotions are not accidents. They are finely tuned signals wired into the brain and body through thousands of years of survival. Understanding the science behind emotions does not strip them of their mystery. It gives us a framework to see why we act, why we react, and why control is possible when knowledge becomes practice. At the center of this system is the brain, where older survival structures meet the more modern reasoning centers. The amygdala, small but powerful, scans for threats and opportunities every second, deciding in milliseconds whether something deserves fear, anger, or joy. It reacts first, long before the logical part of the brain has a chance to weigh in. This is why people sometimes say words they regret, slam doors, or freeze in panic. They acted under the amygdala's command before reason entered the room. The prefrontal cortex, sitting behind the forehead, is slower but wiser. It interprets context, considers consequences, and applies judgment. Emotional mastery grows when the prefrontal cortex is trained to regain control after the amygdala fires. Chemicals carry this conversation across the body. When a threat is detected, adrenaline surges, the heart races, pupils widen, and muscles prime for fight or flight. Cortisol, the stress hormone, floods the bloodstream, preparing energy for quick action. On the other side, oxytocin fosters bonding and trust, while dopamine rewards us for seeking and achieving goals. These chemicals are neither good nor bad. They are tools. Trouble comes when the same circuits designed for escaping predators are triggered by traffic jams, critical emails, or financial worries. The brain cannot always tell the difference between real danger and social discomfort, so it reacts with the same intensity. Emotional control begins with noticing when the body is in survival mode, even though the situation does not require it. Behavior is the outward reflection of this hidden process. A harsh tone, a sudden silence, or a reckless choice often has little to do with the current moment, and everything to do with how the brain has been trained over years of repeated reactions. Neural pathways strengthen every time they are used. If anger has been the default response to frustration for 10 years, the neural highway for anger is wide and fast. The path for patience is narrow and overgrown. Fortunately, the brain is plastic. Repeatedly choosing a calmer response gradually builds a stronger network for self-control, just as practicing an instrument strengthens the relevant circuits. Consistency rewires behavior. One practical practice to strengthen this system is the body-brain reset. Whenever an intense feeling rises, deliberately slow down the nervous system to give the prefrontal cortex time to act. The reset involves 3 deliberate steps. First, take 2 deep breaths longer on the exhale than the inhale to signal safety to the body. Second, relax one muscle group deliberately, such as dropping the shoulders or unclenching the jaw. Third, ask a grounding question. Is this situation life-threatening or life-challenging? This sequence interrupts the automatic cascade of stress chemistry and gives the brain a chance to reinterpret the situation. Practicing this daily, even in mild stress, strengthens the link between awareness and control. A real-life example shows how science translates into practice. A young professional named Sam dreaded public speaking. Every presentation triggered racing thoughts, sweaty palms, and a trembling voice. The amygdala had learned to associate speaking with danger, flooding Sam with adrenaline as if survival depended on escaping the room. Instead of avoiding presentations, Sam began applying a scientific approach. Before each speech, Sam used the body-brain reset, slow breathing, relaxed shoulders, and the grounding question. This calmed the physical storm enough for the prefrontal cortex to engage. Sam also rehearsed with gradual exposure, starting with small groups and building toward larger audiences. Over time, the brain rewired. Presentations no longer triggered full survival mode. Instead, they triggered focus and energy. Sam did not eliminate nervousness, but by working with the biology instead of against it, he transformed fear into controlled performance. Emotions also serve a social purpose. Humans are wired to connect, and emotions are signals for communication. A smile, a raised eyebrow, or a sigh is not just personal experience. It is information shared with others. Mirror neurons in the brain fire when we observe someone else's feelings, allowing us to sense and reflect their state. This explains why tension in a room spreads quickly, or why laughter becomes contagious. Knowing this gives power. By stabilizing one's own emotions, it is possible to influence the emotions of those nearby. A calm presence can de-escalate conflict. An enthusiastic tone can energize a team. Mastery of personal emotions extends beyond self. It shapes collective behavior. Another key insight is that memory and emotion are inseparable. Experiences marked by strong feelings are stored more vividly in the brain. This is why people remember where they were during significant events, or why childhood embarrassments can resurface decades later. The hippocampus, which organizes memory, works closely with the amygdala to prioritize emotionally charged events. This connection explains why some triggers feel overwhelming. The brain retrieves not only the memory, but the original emotional intensity. Recognizing this link helps us understand that present reactions are often echoes of the past. The practice of reframing and reinterpretation rewires those associations so that memories lose their sting over time. Understanding the science does not mean detaching from feeling, but integrating knowledge with experience. Anger, sadness, joy, fear, all are rooted in biology designed to keep us alive and connected. The challenge of mastery is not to silence them, but to direct them. Anger can signal injustice and fuel action for change. Fear can warn of real danger. Joy rewards meaningful progress. Sadness encourages reflection and empathy. Each emotion has value when handled with clarity instead of impulsivity. Knowledge of the systems beneath them gives space for choice. Daily routines can train this system just as surely as physical exercise trains muscles. Short, mindfulness practices reduce amygdala activity over time. Journaling increases activation in the prefrontal cortex by turning vague feelings into structured words. Physical exercise burns off excess cortisol and balances dopamine. Sleep restores the brain's regulation systems. These are not abstract suggestions, but biological necessities for stable emotional health. People who neglect them often find themselves at the mercy of their chemistry rather than in command of it. The science of emotion shows that mastery is possible because the brain and body are malleable. What feels overwhelming today can become manageable with deliberate practice. What feels like instinct can become choice. Awareness of the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, and the chemical messengers inside gives us the ability to pause, reinterpret, and act with intention. Each time we interrupt an old pathway and choose a better one, we are literally reshaping the brain. That is the promise hidden inside the science. Change is not only psychological, but physical, etched into the very circuits of the nervous system. Emotions will never vanish, nor should they. They are part of being human, signals of meaning, value, and connection. The real question is whether we will be servants to those signals or stewards of them. By understanding how they are formed, how they move through the body, and how they influence behavior, we reclaim authority. One breath, one reframed thought, one deliberate action at a time, we transform raw chemistry into directed power. That is where science becomes freedom and knowledge becomes mastery. Chapter 4: Breaking Negative Emotional Patterns for Freedom. Freedom is not only about external circumstances, it begins inside, with the ability to break cycles that keep repeating. Negative emotional patterns act like invisible chains. They appear as the sudden urge to snap when criticized, the reflex to withdraw when conflict arises, or the habit of drowning stress in distraction. These patterns are not chosen in the moment. They are rehearsed over time, etched into the nervous system until they run automatically. Breaking them requires more than willpower. It requires awareness, replacement, and steady repetition of healthier responses until the old paths lose strength and the new ones become natural. The first step in dismantling any pattern is to recognize its sequence. Every habit of feeling and reaction follows a predictable loop. A trigger sets off an emotion, the emotion sparks a thought, the thought pushes behavior, and the behavior reinforces the cycle. Identifying the loop exposes the machinery. Consider someone who feels worthless when a mistake is noticed. The trigger is the correction, the emotion is shame, the thought is I'm not good enough, and the behavior is avoidance. Left unchecked, this cycle deepens over years until small comments feel unbearable. But once the loop is mapped, it becomes possible to interrupt it at several points. Interruption is the key. A negative cycle cannot survive if one link in the chain is broken. Sometimes the break begins at the thought level. Instead of silently repeating, "I always fail," replace it with a question such as, "What can I learn here?" Questions redirect the brain from judgment to problem solving, weakening the emotional surge. At other times, interruption begins at the physical level. When anger tightens the fists, deliberately loosening them and lowering the shoulders signals the body to stand down. The nervous system listens to posture and breath as much as it does to thought. Replacement is more powerful than resistance. Trying not to feel something often intensifies it. The mind rebels against commands to stop worrying or don't be angry. A better approach is substitution, choosing a healthier response that occupies the space where the old one lived. For instance, instead of storming out during conflict, commit to repeating a single grounding sentence such as, "I will respond after I understand." This replacement does not deny the anger, but channels it into a form that supports clarity rather than destruction. Each repetition strengthens the alternative pathway until it becomes more accessible than the old reaction. A practice that proves effective in breaking patterns is called the rewrite drill. Each evening, take 5 minutes to review one moment during the day when a negative pattern showed itself. Write down the trigger, the feeling, and the action taken. Then rewrite the moment in detail, describing what a better response could have looked like. For example, instead of shouting during a disagreement, write, "I noticed my frustration building, so I paused, breathed twice and said, 'Give me a moment to gather my thoughts.'" This rehearsal trains the brain to imagine new behaviors, making them easier to access in real situations. Over weeks, the repeated rewriting builds familiarity with healthier responses until they become automatic. Consider a real example of transformation through this method. A woman named Alina struggled with explosive anger whenever her teenage son ignored her instructions. The cycle was predictable. His intent triggered her frustration, which quickly escalated to yelling, which then led to guilt and tension in their relationship. Through the rewrite drill, Alina began mapping these episodes nightly. She noticed that her anger always peaked within the first 10 seconds of being ignored. With this awareness, she introduced a new plan. When her son failed to respond, she would count slowly to 10 before speaking again. During those 10 seconds, she practiced unclenching her fists and softening her tone. The first attempts were clumsy, but gradually the yelling stopped. Conversations became calmer, and the bond with her son grew stronger. By breaking one link in the loop, the immediate outburst, she dismantled the entire chain of guilt and regret. Breaking negative patterns also demands forgiveness toward oneself. Shame is itself a pattern, one that keeps people locked in repetition. When a slip occurs, the mind often piles criticism on top of the mistake, creating a double burden. To counter this, adopt a principle of rapid recovery. Acknowledge the slip, identify the lesson, and act differently at the next opportunity. Dwelling on failure only feeds the old cycle. Freedom grows not from perfection, but from the speed of recovery. Environment plays a decisive role in emotional patterns. Surroundings can either fuel destructive habits or support healthier ones. If a specific setting consistently provokes negative responses, adjust it. A person trying to manage impatience may find that scrolling through negative news each morning primes frustration for the rest of the day. Changing the environment by removing that stimulus is not weakness, it is strategy. Similarly, associating with people who model calmness strengthens personal discipline, while constant exposure to drama magnifies reactivity. Shaping the environment is a powerful way to weaken old triggers. Breaking cycles requires both short-term tools and long-term vision. The tools provide immediate relief. The vision sustains the effort when old habits try to return. Envision the version of yourself who no longer reacts in destructive ways. Picture how relationships improve, how opportunity expand, and how inner peace deepens. This vision acts as a compass, reminding you why the work matters when discipline feels heavy. Each interruption of a negative pattern is not just an isolated victory, it is a step toward that vision becoming reality. Consistency is the quiet force behind change. No single moment ends a pattern, it is the steady repetition of small choices that reshapes the inner landscape. The first attempt may feel forced, the second awkward, the third slightly easier. By the 10th attempt, the new behavior begins to feel natural, and by the 100th, it becomes who you are. The brain rewires gradually, and persistence ensures the rewiring holds. Patience with the process is as important as intensity in the practice. Negative emotional patterns may feel like unbreakable chains, but they are only loops built through repetition. Awareness exposes them, interruption weakens them, replacement overrides them, and consistency erases their grip. Real freedom is not the absence of emotion, but the ability to choose responses that align with values rather than impulses. The practice of rewriting moments, the discipline of forgiving slips, and the courage to shape environments provide practical tools for this freedom. With each small victory, life becomes less dictated by reflex and more guided by intention. That is how breaking negative emotional patterns opens the door to a life of strength, clarity, and peace. Chapter 5. The Art of Calm Emotional Detachment. Calm emotional detachment is not about becoming cold, indifferent, or heartless. It is about cultivating the ability to stay centered while the storm of emotions swirls around you. Imagine standing in the middle of a crowded street where arguments erupt, tensions rise, and chaos dominates. Detachment gives you the power to remain grounded, observing without being dragged into every conflict. It is the difference between being consumed by fire and being able to watch the flames from a safe distance, knowing you have the choice to engage or not. So often, people confuse attachment with care. They believe that unless they emotionally absorb every situation, they are being uncaring or detached from reality. But calm detachment is the opposite. It allows you to respond with clarity instead of reacting from emotional chaos. It is the art of staying connected without being entangled. You still feel, but you are not drowned by the waves of those feelings. This makes you stronger in relationships, sharper in decision-making, and more resilient in the face of challenges. Emotional attachment often disguises itself as responsibility. For example, someone at work might carry the stress of their team on their shoulders, believing that every failure reflects their worth. Instead of supporting solutions, they burn out under the pressure of carrying emotions that are not even their own. Detachment here does not mean refusing to help, but learning to distinguish between what belongs to you and what does not. It means saying, I will give my best effort, but I will not allow your emotional storm to sink my ship. One of the most effective practices to build calm detachment is called the observer's seat. It is simple yet powerful. Whenever you feel yourself pulled into anger, frustration, or anxiety, imagine sitting a few steps back from your mind. Instead of being the person tangled in the emotion, picture yourself as the one watching it unfold. Label what you see. This is anger rising. This is anxiety knocking. This is disappointment speaking. By naming it, you create space between you and the emotion. That space is freedom. It weakens the automatic pull and allows you to choose a response that serves your higher self rather than your temporary impulses. A real-life example illustrates this well. Daniel, a young entrepreneur, used to lose sleep whenever a client criticized his work. His pattern was predictable. One harsh email would ruin his entire week. He would obsess, replay the words, and let his self-esteem collapse. Then he learned the observer's seat practice. The next time he received negative feedback, instead of diving into panic, he paused and said to himself, "This is the feeling of rejection." By naming it, he realized the criticism was not a verdict on his worth, but simply an opinion about a specific task. That distance allowed him to read the email again with a clear head. Rather than spiraling, he responded professionally, improved his work, and retained the client. Detachment did not make him careless, it made him more effective. Calm detachment also gives you control over how much energy you give to external forces. Life constantly throws bait for emotional reactions. Social media posts designed to spark outrage, news designed to fuel fear, gossip designed to trigger envy. Without detachment, you chase every hook and waste energy on battles that are not yours. With detachment, you step back and ask, does this deserve my attention, or is my focus better spent elsewhere? This question alone can save countless hours of wasted emotional labor. Another dimension of calm detachment is learning to release the need to control others. Much of emotional suffering comes from the illusion that we can change people's behaviors, choices, or attitudes. When a friend makes poor decisions or a colleague refuses to improve, attachment to outcomes keeps you frustrated. Detachment shifts the perspective. You influence, but you do not control. You guide, but you do not cling. This does not mean abandoning people. It means respecting their journey while protecting your peace. Detachment also strengthens relationships. Paradoxically, when you stop clinging to people out of fear of losing them, connections become healthier. You listen better, you respect boundaries, and you give space for growth. Imagine someone in a relationship who constantly fears abandonment. They overreact to small silences, misinterpret neutral actions as rejection, and create unnecessary tension. With calm detachment, that same person can breathe through silence, understanding that their worth does not depend on another's constant reassurance. This creates trust, freedom, and deeper love. A practical tip to reinforce calm detachment is journaling with the release question. Each evening, write down one situation that emotionally disturbed you and ask, what part of this is within my control and what part is not? Circle what is yours to act on and cross out what belongs to others or to circumstances beyond you. Over time, this builds the discipline to automatically focus only on what you can change and let go of the rest. Another example, a teacher named Sophia felt devastated whenever her students failed exams. She believed their poor performance reflected her failure as an educator. This attachment to results caused anxiety, sleepless nights, and burnout. When she began journaling with the release question, she realized her control ended at providing quality teaching, guidance, and support. The choices her students made outside class, their study habits, their focus were beyond her control. With this clarity, she shifted from constant worry to calm acceptance. Her teaching improved because she poured energy into her role rather than draining herself over what she could never command. Calm detachment is not built in a day. It requires daily practice, small steps, and conscious choices. You may not always succeed at staying composed, but each attempt strengthens the ability to step back instead of diving in. Over time, detachment becomes less about effort and more about identity. It becomes who you are, a person who can stand in chaos, yet radiate peace, who can witness pain without drowning in it, who can love without losing themselves. The truth is, life will never stop testing you. There will always be conflicts, disappointments, and situations that could shake your peace. But when you master the art of calm emotional detachment, you carry a shield that no external chaos can pierce. You remain engaged with the world while anchored within yourself. And in that balance, you discover a freedom that is deeper than momentary satisfaction. The freedom of knowing that while you cannot control life, you can always control your inner state. That is the quiet power of calm detachment, and once you practice it consistently, it transforms not just your emotions, but the way you experience every moment of living. Chapter 6. Building strong resilience through emotional strength. Resilience is the invisible armor that allows a person to face life's blows without crumbling under their weight. It is not the absence of hardship, but the ability to rise every time adversity tries to knock you down. Emotional strength forms the foundation of resilience, because without control over your inner state, even the smallest challenges can feel overwhelming. Building resilience is not about pretending pain doesn't exist, nor is it about forcing yourself to stay positive at all times. It is about developing the capacity to feel deeply, acknowledge the weight of your emotions, and still choose to move forward with clarity and courage. In everyday life, people face disappointments, failures, rejections, and unexpected losses. Some collapse under pressure, while others seem to grow stronger. The difference lies in how they manage their emotions in those critical moments. Emotional resilience allows you to experience setbacks without allowing them to define your identity. It means you can experience sadness without drowning in despair, feel anger without losing control, and face fear without becoming paralyzed. This strength doesn't make you immune to pain, it makes you adaptable to it. The crucial step in building emotional strength is cultivating perspective. When something painful happens, the mind has a tendency to exaggerate, telling you the situation is permanent, unbearable, and hopeless. Resilience challenges those narratives. It reminds you that nothing is permanent, that you have survived difficult moments before, and that you have the capacity to endure. For instance, someone who loses a job may feel crushed by the fear of financial insecurity, but resilience shifts the thought process from "this is the end" to "this is an opportunity to start anew." That mental shift alone keeps the emotional storm from overwhelming the individual. Resilience also grows through the practice of self-discipline. Emotional strength is not something you rely on only when life throws challenges at you. It is something you train daily. Just like muscles, it strengthens with repetition, choosing patience when you want to explode, practicing gratitude when your mind wants to complain, or taking one more step when you want to quit. All these small choices train your emotional endurance. Over time, they build an inner core so strong that bigger storms cannot break it. One effective practice to develop resilience is called micro-recovery. This involves intentionally practicing recovery from small daily irritations. For example, when stuck in traffic, instead of letting frustration take control, you take a deep breath and reframe the moment as time to think or listen to something inspiring. By mastering these small irritations, you train your nervous system not to overreact, which prepares you for larger setbacks. Each moment of recovery becomes a rehearsal for life's bigger challenges. A real-life example demonstrates this power clearly. Maria, a young woman working in sales, was once devastated by every rejection. Each failed pitch felt like a personal attack, and she carried the weight of disappointment into the next meeting. Eventually, her performance suffered because she approached new clients with fear instead of confidence. She decided to practice micro-recovery by shifting her emotional response to rejection. Instead of internalizing it, she would take a deep breath, note one lesson from the interaction, and remind herself that rejection was part of the process, not a reflection of her worth. Over months, her resilience grew. She no longer feared rejection, but used it as fuel to refine her skills. As a result, her sales increased, and more importantly, she felt lighter, freer, and emotionally unshakable. Another pillar of resilience is learning how to regulate emotional intensity. People often believe resilience is about suppressing feelings, but the truth is that suppression only makes emotions stronger in the long run. Instead, resilience involves acknowledgement without surrender. It is like holding a wild horse by the reins. You don't let it run you off a cliff, but you don't deny it exists either. By naming your emotions and observing them without judgment, you regain authority over them. You remind yourself, this is sadness, but it does not own me. This is frustration, but I decide what comes next. That inner dialogue restores your power and prevents temporary emotions from dictating permanent actions. Resilient people also understand the importance of meaning. Pain without purpose feels unbearable, but pain linked to growth feels empowering. Athletes endure grueling training because they see it as a step toward victory. Parents sacrifice sleep and comfort because they find meaning in raising children. Likewise, emotional resilience grows when you link hardships to a higher purpose. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "How is this shaping me into who I need to become?" That single shift turns obstacles into stepping stones. A practical method to build this mindset is creating a resilience statement. Write a personal phrase that connects your struggles to a bigger picture and repeat it when challenges arise. For example, someone working through financial hardship might write, "This season is teaching me discipline and resourcefulness that will serve me for life." By repeating this, they transform their struggle into a training ground for strength. Consider the story of David, who lost his small business after years of effort. At first he was crushed, believing his dreams were over. But instead of collapsing, he chose to frame the failure as preparation. He told himself, "This is not the end. This is the lesson I needed to grow into a wiser entrepreneur." That perspective allowed him to rise again, launch a new venture, and eventually succeed far beyond his initial vision. His resilience didn't erase the pain of failure, but it gave him the endurance to transform it into growth. Resilience is also sustained by self-care. It is impossible to remain strong if you neglect your body and mind. Emotional strength weakens when you are chronically exhausted, malnourished, or isolated. Building resilience requires fueling yourself with rest, movement, nourishing food, and supportive relationships. These practices don't eliminate challenges, but they give you the energy to withstand them. Imagine a tree. The storms will come, but with deep roots and nourishment, it stands tall while weaker ones break. Your daily habits are those roots. What makes resilience transformative is that it compounds over time. The more you practice emotional strength in small moments, the stronger you become in the face of life's big trials. Each time you recover from disappointment, you reinforce the belief that you are capable. Each time you endure hardship, you expand your threshold for pressure. Resilience does not mean you stop feeling pain, but that you no longer allow pain to dictate your path. Ultimately, resilience built on emotional strength is a lifelong shield. It allows you to walk through uncertainty with confidence, face rejection with dignity, and endure loss without losing yourself. When storms come, as they always will, you may bend, but you will not break. You will carry the calm assurance that no matter what life takes from you, it cannot take away your ability to rise again. That is the essence of resilience. Not merely surviving, but growing stronger through every trial and discovering in yourself a power greater than any obstacle you face. Chapter 7. Using emotional intelligence to shape relationships. Emotional intelligence is the invisible language of human connection. It is what allows some people to enter a room and immediately sense the mood, to diffuse tension without confrontation, and to make others feel genuinely understood. Mastering emotional intelligence does not rely on manipulation or persuasion. It relies on awareness, empathy, and strategic control of one's own emotions. Relationships are not built solely on shared interests or experiences. They are built on the subtle currents of emotional exchange. The ability to navigate these currents determines the depth, strength, and longevity of every connection you have. The first element of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. You cannot influence the emotions of others if you do not first understand your own. This means paying attention to how you feel in every interaction and what those feelings reveal about your needs, boundaries, and triggers. Notice what causes excitement, irritation, or fear, and observe how these emotions affect your words and actions. By understanding your emotional baseline, you gain clarity on how to respond in ways that are intentional rather than reactive. People with high self-awareness recognize their emotional patterns and can pause before letting a feeling dictate a conversation or decision. The second element is self-regulation. Awareness alone is not enough. You must be able to control impulses, manage stress, and redirect energy in moments of high emotion. For example, when someone criticizes you, the natural reflex might be defensiveness or anger. Emotional intelligence allows you to recognize the initial surge of emotion, breathe, and respond thoughtfully instead of explosively. This capacity builds trust in relationships because people learn that interactions with you are safe and reliable. Emotional intelligence does not suppress feelings, it channels them constructively. Empathy is the third and perhaps most transformative component. Empathy is the ability to sense what another person is feeling, not just to guess based on words, but to read tone, body language, and context. It allows you to see the world through someone else's perspective without losing your own identity. Empathy strengthens relationships because it fosters understanding and reduces conflict. When someone feels truly heard, they are more likely to listen in return. The exchange becomes cooperative rather than combative, and even difficult conversations can lead to solutions rather than resentment. One practical practice to enhance emotional intelligence in relationships is called emotion mirroring. During conversations, take subtle mental notes of the other person's emotional state. Notice their posture, tone of voice, and facial expressions. Internally reflect the emotion you sense. If they seem anxious, think, "I sense tension," or if they appear excited, think, "I feel their enthusiasm." Then respond in a way that acknowledges that emotion without judgment. "I can see this situation is stressful," or "It sounds like you're really excited about this project." This small adjustment signals recognition and respect, creating a bridge between internal states and fostering connection. Practicing mirroring daily trains your awareness and response systems simultaneously. A real-life example illustrates the power of emotional intelligence in shaping relationships. Lisa managed a team where conflict often erupted over minor misunderstandings. One team member, Mark, frequently became defensive when receiving feedback. Instead of reacting with frustration, Lisa observed his body language and tone during a critical meeting and noted internally he feels attacked and insecure. She responded calmly, "I understand this feedback may feel tough. Let's review it together." By acknowledging his emotional state, she reduced tension, kept the discussion constructive, and strengthened trust. Over weeks, the pattern shifted. Mark became more open to feedback, and team collaboration improved. Emotional intelligence had reshaped the dynamic, turning repeated conflict into growth and cohesion. Communication is another vital application. Words are only part of the message. Emotional tone, timing, and context carry far more weight. High emotional intelligence enables you to modulate your language and energy to match the situation. When delivering difficult news, a measured tone prevents panic or defensiveness. When celebrating success, enthusiastic expression amplifies joy. Being attuned to the emotional landscape allows you to lead, negotiate, and connect with authenticity rather than relying solely on logic or authority. Conflict resolution exemplifies emotional intelligence in action. Most arguments escalate because participants react to perceived attacks rather than underlying needs. Emotional intelligence allows you to step back and ask, what is this person feeling, and what do they need? By reframing conflict from a battle over positions to a negotiation of emotions and needs, disputes become opportunities for collaboration instead of sources of lingering resentment. This approach also preserves relationships while addressing the issue effectively, creating long-term stability and mutual respect. Understanding your own emotions and the emotions of others also provides predictive power. You learn to anticipate reactions, plan interventions, and choose words that guide outcomes positively. This does not manipulate, it is preparation rooted in insight. A leader with high emotional intelligence can read a room, notice subtle shifts in mood, and adapt the conversation to keep teams motivated, focused, and cooperative. The ability to sense the undercurrent of emotion in any environment turns ordinary communication into strategic influence built on respect and awareness. Emotional intelligence also strengthens personal boundaries. When you understand your feelings, you recognize what is acceptable and what is not. This awareness allows you to assert yourself confidently and calmly, protecting your energy without alienating others. You can say no without guilt, request clarification without defensiveness, and disengage from manipulative dynamics without shame. Boundaries anchored in emotional intelligence reduce unnecessary conflict and increase trust, because others understand that your responses are deliberate, not reactive. A practical exercise for reinforcing boundaries is the emotional pause. Before responding to a request, criticism, or unexpected change, take a moment to note internally, how do I feel and what is my next best action? Then respond based on clarity rather than reflex. For example, if someone makes an unreasonable request, instead of immediately reacting, pause and say, I need a moment to review this. This creates space for thoughtful choice, ensuring interactions remain grounded in emotional intelligence rather than chaos. The long-term benefits of using emotional intelligence in relationships are profound. You become a person others can trust with honesty and vulnerability. You reduce misunderstandings, prevent unnecessary conflict, and foster deeper connection. Your interactions become richer, more meaningful, and more productive. Emotional intelligence shapes not just the quality of individual relationships, but the overall ecosystem of your life. Family, friends, colleagues, and even casual acquaintances respond to the clarity and empathy you project. Ultimately, emotional intelligence transforms relationships by shifting the center of power inward. You learn to lead yourself first, understand others second, and respond in ways that enhance mutual understanding and cooperation. It is a skill cultivated with awareness, practice, and intention, yet its impact ripples outward, creating stronger bonds, calmer interactions, and enduring trust. By mastering emotional intelligence, you gain the ability to shape your relationships, not by force or persuasion, but by insight, empathy, and deliberate action, turning ordinary interactions into opportunities for connection, growth, and lasting harmony. Chapter 8: Daily Practices for Emotional Stability and Balance. Emotional stability is the foundation for living a life of clarity, purpose, and resilience. It is not a static state where emotions disappear, but rather a dynamic balance that allows feelings to flow without being overwhelming. Stability does not come from avoiding emotions. It comes from practicing awareness, regulation, and intentionality each day. The mind, much like a muscle, grows stronger when exercised regularly. Small, consistent practices can build profound resilience, calm, and balance, shaping how you respond to life's challenges and opportunities. Emotional equilibrium allows you to navigate relationships, work, and personal goals with steadiness, rather than being tossed by every minor disruption. Daily emotional practices are about creating habits that reinforce awareness and self-regulation. Awareness begins with paying attention to your internal state multiple times a day. Notice when tension arises, when your thoughts spiral, or when irritability appears, labeling these moments quietly in your mind. This is frustration, this is anxiety, activates the conscious part of your brain and allows you to step out of automatic reaction. Awareness creates the pause between stimulus and response, which is where true control lives. Without that pause, emotions act like a storm with no anchor, sweeping you along unconsciously. Regulation is the next critical layer. Emotional balance is maintained not by suppressing feelings, but by guiding them intentionally. Breathing techniques, posture adjustments, and mental reframing are all tools for regulation. A deep, deliberate breath lowers heart rate and signals the body that the situation is not life-threatening, even if the mind interprets it as urgent. Aligning your body, relaxing shoulders, unclenching jaws, grounding feet, supports the nervous system and reinforces calm. These seemingly small physical interventions influence emotional experience more than most people realize, turning reflexive reactions into measured responses. One highly effective daily practice to reinforce stability is the 3-check reflection. Each evening, take 5 minutes to review 3 emotional moments from your day. One where you responded well, one where you could have handled things better, and one where you noticed tension but successfully paused. For each moment, write down the trigger, the emotion, your response, and an insight or lesson. This habit trains your mind to notice patterns, strengthen positive responses, and learn from moments that could otherwise be forgotten. The act of reflection builds both awareness and self-discipline, cementing emotional balance over time. Real-life examples highlight the impact of consistent daily practices. Consider Jason, a manager who struggled with irritability under pressure. Deadlines, client complaints, and team disagreements would trigger instant tension, leaving him feeling drained and reactive. He implemented a daily routine that included morning journaling, 3 deep breath exercises before each meeting, and the 3-check reflection at night. Within weeks, he noticed he was calmer, more focused, and able to engage colleagues without snapping. The same stressful situations that once dominated his mind no longer dictated his actions. Jason's stability improved not overnight, but gradually through repeated, intentional daily actions. Another dimension of daily practice is grounding and mindfulness. Spending even 10 minutes observing your environment without judgment recalibrates your mind. Sit quietly. Focus on sounds, sensations, and your breathing. Notice thoughts as they arise, labeling them without attachment, then return attention to your senses. This practice strengthens the prefrontal cortex, improves attention, and reduces impulsive reactions. Over time, your nervous system becomes less reactive, and emotional equilibrium grows from within rather than being imposed by external routines. Consistency matters more than intensity. Even brief, repeated moments of attention to emotional regulation outperform sporadic, intense efforts. 5 minutes in the morning, 2 minutes during a midday pause, and a 5-minute reflection at night compound over time. These moments create neural pathways that favor calm, deliberate responses rather than instinctive reactions. The brain begins to anticipate stability, and habitual composure becomes automatic. Emotional balance also benefits from deliberate exposure to positive, stabilizing inputs. Reading, music, nature, and meaningful social interactions reinforce equilibrium by providing calm energy that the mind absorbs naturally. Conversely, limiting exposure to negative or triggering stimuli, sensationalized news, social media arguments, or toxic conversations reduces unnecessary strain on the nervous system. Emotional health is not built solely on avoidance of stress, but strategic management of what we allow to influence our minds. An additional strategy for emotional stability is micro-pausing. Whenever a surge of strong emotion appears, pause for just a few seconds to notice what is happening internally. Ask, "What am I feeling and why?" Acknowledge the physical sensations, thoughts, and potential triggers. Often, this pause is enough to prevent a reactive explosion and allows a considered response. This simple practice, when done consistently throughout the day, creates a sense of mastery over inner states. Daily practices also strengthen resilience. By intentionally experiencing, processing, and observing emotions rather than suppressing them, the mind learns that emotions are temporary and manageable. Anxiety does not last forever. Irritation passes, excitement fades. Each time you survive and respond deliberately, you reinforce the understanding that you are capable of handling emotional turbulence. This repeated rehearsal builds both confidence and composure. Consider a personal example. Emily, a teacher, felt constantly overwhelmed by the emotional ups and downs of her classroom. Crying students, complaints from parents, and conflicts among staff left her feeling drained and reactive. She began implementing morning mindfulness, short breathing exercises before parent meetings, and nightly reflection on emotional moments. Over several months, Emily became calmer, more patient, and more intentional in her interactions. Her ability to maintain balance positively influenced her students, colleagues, and personal life, demonstrating that daily structured practice transforms emotional capacity. Ultimately, daily practices for emotional stability are about creating a framework that supports consistent control. Awareness, regulation, reflection, grounding, and micro-pausing are tools, but they must be applied consistently to become effective. Emotional balance is not a single achievement. It is the result of a lifetime of intentional, repeated actions. By committing to these practices, you strengthen your capacity to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively, remain calm amid uncertainty, and navigate life with clarity. Mastering emotional stability transforms more than your inner state. It changes your relationships, decisions, and the way you experience life itself. Each moment of deliberate practice compounds into resilience, composure, and clarity. Life will always present challenges, but with daily habits that anchor the mind and regulate the heart, those challenges no longer control you. Instead, you engage with them from a place of strength, balance, and intentionality, turning everyday emotional moments into stepping stones toward mastery, peace, and enduring fulfillment. Chapter 9. Staying composed in high-stakes, stressful moments. High-stakes situations test the limits of emotional control like nothing else. Whether it is a critical business negotiation, a tense family confrontation, a performance under scrutiny, or an unexpected crisis, these moments reveal the strength or weakness of your emotional foundation. Most people instinctively react with heightened stress, impulsive words, or panic-driven decisions. Staying composed in these circumstances is not about suppressing feelings or pretending to be unaffected. It is about cultivating a mental and emotional framework that allows you to observe the storm, remain anchored, and respond with precision rather than reflex. Composure is not a trait, it is a skill that can be practiced, refined, and mastered over time. The first step to composure is preparation. High-pressure moments often feel overwhelming because the mind and body are caught off guard. Anticipating potential stresses allows you to plan responses in advance. Consider a public speaker preparing for a crucial presentation rather than waiting to feel confident in the moment. They rehearse, anticipate questions, and visualize themselves handling interruptions with calm authority. This mental rehearsal trains the nervous system, reducing the likelihood of panic and enabling focused performance when the moment arrives. Breath control is a cornerstone of maintaining composure. The body's automatic stress response triggers rapid, shallow breathing, which intensifies feelings of panic or anxiety. Slowing and deepening the breath signals to the brain that the situation is manageable. One practice, called the 4-4-6 method, involves inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 4 counts, and exhaling for 6 counts. This simple yet effective rhythm calms the nervous system, lowers heart rate, and increases clarity, allowing rational thought to override impulsive reactions. Breath becomes an anchor, grounding you in the middle of chaos. Awareness of physiological cues is equally critical. Composure begins with noticing signs of tension, clenched jaws, tight shoulders, rapid heartbeat, or shallow breathing. Recognizing these signals early provides the opportunity to intervene before the stress response escalates. Pausing to adjust posture, release tension, and breathe consciously can dramatically alter the trajectory of your reaction. The body and mind are interconnected, and small physical interventions have outsized effects on emotional stability. Cognitive framing is another essential tool. Stressful moments often trigger catastrophic thinking, imagining the worst-case scenario and spiraling into fear. Emotional control requires reframing these thoughts into constructive possibilities. Instead of seeing a client's harsh criticism as a personal attack, consider it a source of insight. Instead of viewing a tight deadline as a trap, see it as a challenge to focus your skills. By consciously reshaping the narrative, you regain agency and reduce the emotional grip of stresses. A real-life example illustrates this power. Thomas, an emergency room nurse, faced a life-or-death situation when multiple critical patients arrived simultaneously. The chaos could have overwhelmed him, triggering panic and poor decisions. Instead, he relied on practiced routines, deep breaths, and mental prioritization. He assessed each patient calmly, delegated tasks efficiently, and maintained clear communication with his team. By staying composed, Thomas not only saved lives, but also prevented mistakes that often accompany frantic reactions. His composure was not innate. It was the result of deliberate preparation, awareness, and disciplined response. Emotional detachment enhances composure. High-stakes situations often generate intense feelings of fear, frustration, or anger. Detachment does not mean indifference. It means observing the emotion without being swept away. Picture a chess player in a tournament facing a critical move. The pressure is intense, yet they maintain focus on the board rather than the adrenaline or the stakes. Similarly, in life, observing your emotions allows for deliberate responses rather than reactive impulses. You acknowledge the feeling, note its presence, and proceed without being hijacked by it. Visualization is a practical method to strengthen emotional control under pressure. Before entering a challenging scenario, vividly imagine yourself performing calmly and effectively. Include every detail, the sounds, sights, interactions, and sensations. Picture yourself encountering a surprise, remaining poised, and making the right decision. Visualization trains the brain, creating familiarity and confidence. When the actual moment arrives, the nervous system recognizes the scenario, reducing stress and enhancing composure. This mental rehearsal transforms uncertainty into preparedness. Micro-pauses during high-pressure moments are invaluable. Even a few seconds to inhale, scan the environment, and focus on the next actionable step can prevent rash reactions. These pauses create space between stimulus and response, allowing reason to guide behavior instead of raw emotion. In meetings, conversations, or performance scenarios, pausing before replying or acting demonstrates not weakness but mastery. It conveys confidence, clarity, and self-control. Consider another example. Rachel, a corporate executive, faced a hostile board meeting where investors questioned her strategy aggressively. In the past, she would have reacted defensively, escalating conflict. This time, she employed a micro-pause before each response, acknowledged the questions calmly, and reframed the discussion towards solutions rather than blame. Her composure not only preserved her credibility, but also turned the tension into a collaborative problem-solving session. Emotional mastery transformed a potentially disastrous encounter into an opportunity for influence and trust building. Preparation extends beyond mental and emotional training. It includes physical and logistical readiness, adequate rest, proper nutrition, hydration, and exercise all contribute to the ability to remain steady under pressure. Stress is more easily managed when the body is well maintained. Similarly, knowing the context, facts, and procedures relevant to the high-stakes situation reduces uncertainty, which is a primary trigger of emotional turbulence. Composure is a combination of mind, body, and preparation, each reinforcing the other. Finally, reflection after high-pressure moments strengthens future composure. Analyzing what went well, what triggered tension, and how responses could improve builds a self-reinforcing loop. Each reflection enhances awareness, reinforces effective practices, and gradually develops instinctive calm under stress. Over time, what once felt overwhelming becomes manageable, and composure becomes habitual rather than aspirational. Staying composed in high-stakes, stressful moments is a skill built through awareness, preparation, physiological control, cognitive framing, detachment, visualization, micro-pauses, and consistent reflection. It is not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to practice, refine, and internalize composure. Life will inevitably present moments that demand calm, yet with deliberate strategies and disciplined habits, you can face any crisis with clarity, confidence, and control, transforming pressure into power and chaos into opportunity. Chapter 10: Emotional Control as the Key to Mastery. True mastery in life begins and ends with emotional control. Everything you achieve, every relationship you nurture, and every decision you make is filtered through your emotional state. Unchecked emotions can derail progress, obscure judgment, and erode confidence, while controlled emotions provide clarity, resilience, and power. Emotional control is not about suppressing feelings or pretending to be unaffected by life. It is about understanding, regulating, and channeling emotions in ways that serve your goals and values. It transforms chaos into clarity, impulsivity into deliberate action, and reaction into mastery. Many people underestimate the role of emotions in shaping their lives. Stress, anger, anxiety, and fear often dictate decisions before the mind has a chance to weigh consequences. A rushed email sent in anger, a reaction to criticism, or a panicked response to unforeseen events can create irreversible consequences. Emotional control changes that dynamic. It allows you to pause, observe, and respond from a place of strength and awareness. You regain sovereignty over your mind and actions, which in turn empowers every aspect of your life. The foundation of emotional control lies in awareness. You must first recognize what you are feeling, why you are feeling it, and how it manifests in your body. Emotions are signals, not commands. Anxiety may indicate a need for preparation, anger may highlight a boundary being crossed, and sadness may reveal a loss that requires acknowledgement. By interpreting these signals without being consumed by them, you create a platform for deliberate choice. Awareness transforms raw emotion into actionable insight. Self-regulation is the next layer. Once you recognize the emotion, you have the opportunity to direct its energy constructively. Anger can become motivation to resolve a problem, fear can sharpen focus for careful planning, and frustration can fuel disciplined effort. Self-regulation is not about denial, it is about mastery. It is the ability to convert emotional energy into purposeful behavior rather than allowing it to scatter or dominate your decisions. One highly effective practice for building emotional control is called the pause and assess method. Whenever a strong emotion arises, pause for a few seconds and consciously identify the feeling. Label it anger, anxiety, excitement, or sadness. Then ask yourself two questions. What is this emotion telling me, and what action will serve me best in this moment? By doing so, you break the automatic chain reaction of emotion and replace it with a thoughtful, measured response. Over time, this practice rewires the brain, creating a natural habit of control rather than reaction. Real-life examples reveal the transformative power of emotional control. Consider a professional athlete preparing for a championship game. The pressure is immense, and the emotions range from fear to exhilaration. Those who lack control often falter under stress, letting anxiety or overconfidence dictate performance. Yet those who practice emotional mastery through visualization, focused breathing, and mental rehearsal can harness that energy to perform at peak levels. Their emotions become allies rather than obstacles, channeling intensity into precision, endurance, and strategic execution. Emotional control is also the key to resilience. Life inevitably presents setbacks, losses, and conflicts. Without mastery, these events can trigger despair, resentment, or destructive behaviors. With control, setbacks become lessons, challenges become opportunities, and failure becomes a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. It allows you to maintain composure, think strategically, and adapt rapidly, transforming adversity into growth rather than defeat. Relationships are profoundly affected by emotional mastery. Uncontrolled emotions can lead to conflict, miscommunication, and regret, while controlled emotions build trust, empathy, and deeper connections. Emotional control allows you to listen without judgment, respond without defensiveness, and act with integrity even under pressure. It ensures that your interactions are not hijacked by impulsive reactions, but guided by clarity and intention. Those who master their emotions influence others not through force, but through presence, understanding, and respect. A practical exercise to reinforce emotional control in daily life is called emotional journaling with intention. Each day, write down moments when your emotions were heightened, note what triggered them, how you responded, and how you could respond better next time. Then visualize handling similar situations with calm and precision. This practice not only develops awareness and self-regulation, but also strengthens foresight, allowing you to anticipate emotional triggers and prepare responses in advance. Consider Sarah, a project manager who struggled with frustration and impulsivity under tight deadlines. She often snapped at colleagues or made hasty decisions when stressed. After implementing intentional emotional control practices, pausing before responding, journaling triggers, and visualizing calm interactions, her performance and relationships transformed. She completed projects efficiently, maintained a positive team environment, and noticed a newfound sense of confidence and calm that reinforced every decision she made. Emotional control became the key to both professional mastery and personal fulfillment. Another dimension of mastery is the integration of emotional control into decision-making. When emotions are unregulated, choices are reactive, short-sighted, and influenced by momentary feelings. When controlled, decisions align with long-term goals, values, and priorities. The ability to assess situations with clarity, acknowledge emotions without being ruled by them, and choose actions based on strategy rather than impulse elevates performance in every area of life. Leaders, entrepreneurs, and high performers consistently demonstrate that the mastery of emotions is inseparable from mastery in life itself. Daily practice compounds results. Emotional control is not a one-time achievement, but a continual refinement. Breathing exercises, reflection, journaling, visualization, and micro-pauses are tools that must be applied consistently to create lasting neural pathways. Each small act of restraint, awareness, or reframing strengthens the mind's ability to remain composed and purposeful. Over time, emotional control becomes second nature, allowing you to navigate complexity, uncertainty, and high pressure with grace and effectiveness. Ultimately, emotional control is not a limitation. It is freedom. It frees you from being a victim of circumstances, other people's reactions, or fleeting feelings. It allows you to act with intention, create meaningful impact, and experience life fully without being hijacked by every passing emotional wave. Those who cultivate this skill unlock their true potential, because mastery over self precedes mastery over any domain. The ability to stay calm, deliberate, and focused under all conditions is the invisible force that propels success, nurtures relationships, and sustains fulfillment. When emotional control becomes a consistent practice, it transforms ordinary life into a platform for mastery. It is the key that converts pressure into clarity, challenges into opportunities, and emotion into power. Every thought, action, and relationship becomes sharper, more intentional, and more aligned with purpose. Life mastery begins with understanding your emotions, regulating them skillfully, and channeling their energy to serve your highest goals. Those who achieve this unlock a freedom and capability that allows them not just to survive life's turbulence, but to thrive in ways that others only dream of. Emotional control is the ultimate lever for human potential. It bridges awareness, resilience, focus, and influence into a coherent, powerful force. When practiced with discipline and intention, it ensures that every choice you make, every action you take, and every interaction you have is guided not by chaos or impulse, but by clarity, purpose, and mastery. It is the difference between being moved by life and moving life with conscious power. Mastery begins within, and emotional control is the key that opens that door.